Hey everyone, you are listening to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. This little banter is about a car ride long and features your hosts, JJ Parker and Melissa Albers. JJ owns a tech company and Melissa has been a coach working with influencers for the last 18 years.
JJ, you had such a hard beginning of the week. And, I know sometimes we like to talk about when we've had tough times, and it's really relevant because it makes the podcast easy for conversation. It just flows and it's so real and authentic for us. But I don't know if you'll be up for that for this week. But you had an exceptionally challenging start to your week.
Yes.
Both on the professional side and the personal side, and it really impacted you. And we've kind of been trying to talk about it. Yeah, we've been talking about it a lot, on and off, I think, since.
So what I did to deal with my stress was that I spent like a couple of hours yesterday researching and then purchasing a new backpack.
Of course you did. That makes total sense.
I had a million things to do, and I had plenty of things to work on. And then I wasted a chunk of time looking for a backpack. I do have like a little bit of like a backpack problem.
Yes, so does my son. So did you actually have to open up the Uncle Buck closet and take out 5 other backpacks to find room for this one new one?
I was just like trying to remember which backpacks I own, so I didn't like buy, like a duplicate.
Because you like what you like. Well, I think
pretty stoked about my new backpack, but it's really to say like when we get stressed out.
Yeah.
Like we sometimes do like bad habits. Like we revert to these things that are not helpful. Like procrastination is my number one bad habit.
Yes.
And I augment that with useless phone scrolling and online shopping.
Oh my gosh. My number one bad habit would be, honestly, it sounds ridiculous, but it is eating candy. I love candy. It's ridiculous. I can try to tell myself I'm not going to eat it, but then anytime that I have a little, I don't know, something doesn't feel good, I just start thinking about, wait a minute.
Go find the candy bowl.
I'm going to go get some Mike and Ike's. No, but I think we're having a little fun with the topic, but I think what's really interesting about this is that as you and I have been in the self-awareness journey now for over a year, I think that we've learned so much. Individually, we've learned about ourselves and learned about each other a lot. And I feel like the more awareness that we gain in our own selves, the more painful it is when we drop into these things about ourselves that drive us crazy. Like you use some pretty strong words to talk about, judging words about taking a couple hours off because you were really fried. You were really fried. And, but as you were describing it just now, you were like, I just wasted 2 hours. And, but don't you think like the more you know when you're uncomfortable now, that the more uncomfortable, the more painful it actually is because you spend more time not like that?
Yeah, I did feel really guilty. I was like, look at how much stuff I could have gotten done. And the reward for it wasn't even that great. I mean, my backpack will be awesome. But
yeah, totally.
Won't even come for like 3 days.
Amazon's so slow right now.
Well, yeah, you're right. Like, I think that, we talk about how when you do something that's not serving you, that makes you feel bad after that second wave of judgment comes behind it.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. The more you actually work on self-awareness, the bigger that judgment wave
Can
seems
be.
to get.
Can
yeah,
be.
or can be.
Can be.
Right?
Yeah.
And but like you said, like or like we talk about, like at least I know that judgment wave's there, and I kind of know these patterns, right?
Yeah.
So it makes surfing through the waves a little easier.
Well, what I was going to say about that is I think that we start to know our own patterns more, you know, whether it be working with a coach, whether it be listening to the self-awareness journey, whether it just be your own development. You start to learn your own patterns more, and you become a lot more intimate with yourself. Like you can sense when you're starting to get out of alignment. Like I'll stop saying you, I'll say me. I can sense when I'm starting to get out of alignment, and there's so much earlier on I can get out ahead of that because I recognize, I'm starting to feel, I can tell I don't feel in alignment because I feel this need to start controlling more of the outcomes. Like that would be one of my bad habits that I mentally go to with work when I feel overwhelmed or something isn't going like I pictured that it should. Yeah. And I can sense way earlier on now that I'm starting to get like that. Like I can sense it. And I said, and a lot of the times now I'll be like, oh, there it is. That's okay. Like it's okay. I can tell that I'm feeling a little out of sorts, and my natural knee-jerk reaction would be to like take stronger control over it. Like that's what I always did. And I recognize that I want to do that right now. But lots of the times I'll just go, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just going to change my thought. I'm going to change what I'm doing. I'm going to change what project I'm working on. But every once in a while, I can't do that. Every once in a while, I just go right to that rigidity. I can just, inside of me, I just feel like this huge ball of pressure to just go back to what you used to do because it's such a good payoff in the moment. It's not though. So what happens is I'm going to use the word succumb. If I succumb to that feeling of rigidity and succumb to that feeling, my old habit of trying to take control, then not only does it not work, like it never does, but then I think, see, there you did it again. You knew better. You knew way better this time, and you didn't stop yourself. So it's like almost the feeling of not having that rigidity feels so good. And now what I know what that feels like, boinging back into that bad habit is so much more painful. Yeah.
What you just described, I think, is good to stop and note. Is a lot of times when we think about bad habits, we might think of maybe like actions that we do, or like things like whatever,
chewing your nails,
shopping, chewing nails, eating, drinking, smoking, right? Social media, like these kinds of things.
External habits. Yeah.
Yep. And what you're saying, like, we also all have more like internal habits and
mental and emotional
habits, right? You know, like for me, a bad communication habit or relationship habit that I have to work on all the time is, and I was pretty conscious of it this week, is that if I get overwhelmed, like I go really internal. Yeah. I don't share. I like get real quiet.
I know.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's harmful to like my relationships with people. You know,
well, hang on. That's a huge judgment to say.
Okay.
And I recognize that you put pressure on yourself to not be like that. But I would also say, because that's what we as humans do though, right? We say, these are the things that I do for coping. This is my coping mechanism because I'm feeling so sad or so upset. And this coping mechanism is a terrible thing to do to other people. Well, really, it's, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but
no,
I think it's way more important to recognize how it serves you or does not serve you. Like those, like, again, like, the pattern of my being overly rigid in my mind, and for you, the pattern of shutting down when you get overwhelmed. that served, both of those patterns have served us for a really long time, and they worked for a really, really long time. But I think as we develop and grow, those older habits that we have, we outgrow them eventually, and they don't work anymore. And so then we have this really uncomfortable state of, this is what I always did to make myself feel better, and now I don't feel better even when I'm doing it. As a matter of fact, I actually can maybe feel a little worse. And that's the part I think that gets scary.
Yeah. I like the way you phrase that as like a coping mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the probably
Yeah.
all the bad habits are coping mechanisms where we're trying to go to a place where where we once felt happy, safe, satisfied, whatever it might be.
Or at least protected. Like we felt like we could protect ourselves by having certain internal processes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, right.
So we, as we think about like this idea that when we get overwhelmed, overly emotional, have a lot going on, these coping mechanisms and habits emerge. The one thing I think is really interesting about some of it is when we talk about habits, when I think about habits, it's like something I do really often, right? But a lot of the things that happen when we're stressed out are things I don't do every day. So they don't feel very habitual.
Yeah.
But then they come up and I'm just like right back into that routine.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's
like
interesting.
it goes, because the definition of a habit is like something on autopilot, right?
Yeah.
But the habits we're talking about are like really almost like deep,
Oh, yeah.
right? They're so
Yeah.
ingrained in there. They're so etched in way deep in our brain that when those trigger, those go on autopilot, and they're really hard to notice because they're really old, right?
Yeah, from the beginning, probably from the time we were single digit ages.
Yeah, like right from our childhood.
Yeah. Those are, I think, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I just like that part is interesting. But then I wanted to shift and talk about recognizing when those triggers and those reactions.
Yeah. Well, it's all how, your body, okay, so like, just like if you can reflect back, like we're using your example of earlier this week. Sorry to automatically put you on the pedestal over this, but
the Self-Awareness Journey podcast is mine and your therapy time,
I know it really is. But like, so because I could tell that you were out of whack, and actually I can tell when you're building to that, because I know you so well, and I also know to
we should get a hand signal for that. So you can let me know before I know.
Maybe a pair of fun sunglasses or something to just put on. Oh, that's funny. But yeah, no, I think that it starts to build in us, right? And I think that it's really, really hard emotionally to recognize when we're in full cry. I think it's just really, really hard to do that. And even when people around us can sense that we're starting to get like that, I think we just tell ourselves stories because
is that lying to ourselves?
Well,
like,
I
right?
think
we're trying to be more optimistic sometimes. Like, oh no, it's good. Everything's going to be okay. It's okay. Like, it's not as bad as I'm making it out to be, or something like that.
It's just like we talk about in the actor self and the authentic self. In the authentic self, we know who we are, right? We're comfortable. Everything we think, say, and do is in alignment. But when we're interacting with anyone else in our lives, and especially people that are close to us, we don't always feel safe enough to do that because we're worrying about what other people will think, do, or say because of it. It's just like you were saying. It's like, I am hurtful to people when I am like that. Now, whether that's truth or not is sort of immaterial in this conversation, right? Because we're not talking about how it dynamically affects your other relationships, because the only relationship that really matters is you with you. Like that's it. Me with me, my relationship with me, and being able to be authentic with myself, be willing to be willing to be honest with what is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the hardest part. That's the hardest part because of all these other norms that we have created around us that make it unpopular for us to behave differently or act in a new aware state, or it's scary. It's scary
Mm-hmm.
to do that.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on like, like we talk about the coming home step, right, on the
Yeah.
self-awareness journey.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm just thinking like, okay, we're reflecting on it, right?
Yeah.
Where like refocusing sort of, so reflect, refocus, remember are the 3 steps. You're kind of helping me refocus like that feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm trying to think like, what might I do next time?
Yeah.
Right? Next time I'm gonna get overwhelmed because it's gonna happen again.
Yeah, of course.
I think we literally have this same podcast every 2-3 months.
Well, that's good. That means
JJ's
it's coming
stressed
up
out in some way, and then here we are.
Yeah, but this is being a human. Everybody has these things. It's just that yours are unique to you, just like everybody else has their unique things.
So things that I feel like I should have done this week, well, as I was recognizing that I was getting stressed out, like again, one of my bad habits is jumping into just doing, right, and sort of ignoring. Although
doing something unrelated, though, unrelated
doing
to the
something
stress, unrelated to the stress.
Right. Why the procrastination and the doing, even though they seem like opposite things, they're actually
the same.
feed into each other into like a productivity death spiral.
There's the judgment again, just in case
Sorry,
people didn't hear that.
I'll try to knock that off. But like thinking back to this week, what I really needed to do was just this sounds kind of like simple, but like I really needed to just sit quietly for a little while.
Yeah.
I need to actually not do anything for a little bit.
Well,
I think,
not to go back to our teaching and what we talk about all the time.
We should. That's the whole point of this.
Oh, okay, right. Let me just go get my notes. But, when we talk about the feelings, we talk about the very first state of the self-awareness journey is we get a feeling, right? Like something triggers us. Sorry, we get triggered. Yeah. And in your case, it was a great amount of work. And there was some resistance to some of the work that you had to do, by the way.
That's a different episode we'll get into.
But there was a little tentative component there. And I think that was actually the root of the procrastination. So, okay. So the point is that we get triggered by something and then we have these feelings, like we get flooded with feelings. And in our practice, what we are hoping for us to do and for everyone else listening is when something triggers you, in your case, it was a great amount of work and some of it you were not quite sure on yet for personal reasons. And it caused you to have these feelings. The feelings were so uncomfortable for you that you put a stop on everything. So that was your reaction to it. But remember what we talk about is to sit with it for a moment and to just exactly like you said, be quiet with it and say, what's behind this feeling? What are the feelings I'm actually feeling? And it's so hard to do that when we're in that heightened state. Oh, wow, it's hard to do that. It is
so hard. Yeah.
But that's the key, because exactly right. Like if we give ourselves a minute to just sit there and reflect, and that's where I am too in this practice. Like when I get triggered by something and want to have total control, and I feel this rigidity creeping in, like, well, just go do this or call this person or force this action faster. Like I want to go into that, shove a square peg into a round hole. Sometimes now I have success going, oh, that feels familiar. oh, is this the source of it again? Because I'm feeling uneasy, or I feel like I don't have any control over this, and that scares me. That's what the real thing is. I feel scared about something.
Yeah.
There's some fear for me somewhere. And if I just take a moment, it's real easy to figure that out. It's really easy to figure it out, but we don't usually like to do that because it feels like it's going to be too exposing for ourselves. Like, oh, I don't want to see what's going to be there. I don't really want to know because I'm sure it's going to be worse than this horrible feeling.
Well, it's the end of the week right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I did figure it out. We figured it out like 20 minutes ago when we were talking earlier. The root of my anxiety.
Yeah.
I think for this week at least.
Yeah, but isn't that cool though? Like, I mean, you know, we make jokes about it, and it, I mean, some of these topics are harder to talk about, but I think that they're really meaningful for people, and they're meaningful for me. Like, I just feel like it's really helpful to talk through these patterns, especially when they're patterns that are really obvious that we know. We see a lot, repetitive patterns that we see a lot, either in ourselves or those that we're around a lot, or those that we care about. I think it's really easy to see those patterns. And another really interesting thing about this, I think, is when we get on this journey and then we start having these little epiphanies, you know, it's super easy to do. Start telling everybody else what their problems are, like what they're doing wrong.
I was just going to ask you about that as the like kind of one last thing.
Yeah.
Here was that this week, you know, you and I like work pretty much every day on this stuff. Earlier this week, you very gently suggested that we take the rest of the week off.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So, because you kind of knew that I was getting sideways.
Yeah.
And you knew that more work for me was not going to be
helpful,
like the healthiest path.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I agreed, although I remember sort of like no, it's fine. I'll be fine.
Yeah, you did.
We'll
you did. Actually, you
right?
said that. It'll be fine.
So we said, like you mentioned earlier, like you noticed it in me, that you noticed that I was getting stressed out before I noticed. And then you did a very kind and gentle like thing. Now, how do we help others when we see them in that situation? I mean, we explain how you just helped me, but I don't imagine going to someone and saying, "Whoa, you are so stressed out. You need to do this or that," right?
Yeah, that's a terrible idea.
How do we support others when we see them getting sideways? Because we do want to help our friends and our family and the people we care about when they're getting in these sideways states.
Yeah. I think the number one thing is to not diagnose, even if you can see it. Like, because when you're like, just in using this example, I would never say to you, "Oh, here you go. You're going into your pattern." I would never, ever call that out, because it's not my place to do that. It's not my place to call out anybody else's patterns. However, when we know someone really well and we recognize what those patterns are, I think what we can do is provide space and empathy. You know, we can recognize the feeling of how that feels, because we're like that. We have our own, whether it's the same topic or not. I was saying to a client of mine yesterday regarding their spouse, because they were going, you know, their spouse is doing this and doing that and doing this and doing that. And at the end of the conversation, it became obvious that they were both doing the same thing, but it was way easier to see it in that spouse. Yeah,
and we always say it's easier to recognize things in others than it is in yourself.
And my response is, we're all going to school. We're all going to school. We're just in different places of the lesson. We're just in different places. We're just in different classrooms. And let's let people be in their own processes and at least be empathetic and caring for them and show them grace. I think that's what we can do. I don't think we have any right, power, authority, education that makes it okay to do anything beyond that.
That's good advice. Well, thank you for helping me through this week.
Yeah, I can't wait to see your new backpack.
It's gonna be great.
So awesome.
We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode. Our mission is to help people become happier and more effective by gaining insight into their own thoughts and feelings. We'd love your support. First, share this podcast with anyone you think might enjoy it. Second, leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast site. This helps others discover the podcast so we can reach more people. And third, sign up for our newsletter at theselfawarenessjourney.com. This will help us communicate better with you and build our community. Thank you so much for joining us in the Self-Awareness Journey. We'll see you next week.